Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I've been an Uber driver for 3 years now, mostly working the night shift because the pay is better. That evening, around 11 p.m., it was raining. My phone rang with a trip request from Burnside Street. I accepted the ride and quickly drove to the pickup location. When I arrived, I saw a couple. The guy was tall and wearing a black hoodie. The girl was wearing a thin jacket with long hair down. They got in the car without saying a word. I greeted them, but the guy just nodded back. The girl kept her face down, her hair hiding her features. I drove for about 10 minutes on the highway. It was raining outside, so I drove slowly, heading east toward the city. The atmosphere in the car was weirdly heavy. I tried to focus on the road, but I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the guy staring intently at the girl. His body was tense, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. The girl was still looking down, not moving. 5 more minutes went by, and the guy started to speak. His voice sounded strained, like he was trying to hold back. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" The girl was silent. Her hand was gripping the hem of her jacket. "How long are you going to stay quiet like this?" "I saw everything." The girl shook her head slightly, her hair covering half her face. I don't want to fight right now. Tell me, what did you and him do?" The girl didn't answer and turned her face away. Her silence just made her boyfriend angrier. He leaned toward her, his voice a hiss. "Answer me. What did he give you that I didn't?" The girl flinched. "Stop! You're scaring me!" He roared, slamming his hand on the seat. "If you were scared, you wouldn't have done it. You cheat! You liar!" The girl started crying, turning her face to the window. Her boyfriend was breathing heavily. The air in the car was thick with tension. From the guy's words, I could figure out what had happened. He had caught her with another man, maybe right before they called my car. I didn't know the details, but it was clear this was a bad situation. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what you're doing behind my back? You bitch. I gave you everything, and you have the nerve to do this?" He yelled even louder, pounding the seat repeatedly. Then suddenly the girl lifted her head, her voice sharp. "Shut up! Do you think acting like this gives you the right to hit me? Control, ordering me around, cursing, hitting. You do whatever your mood dictates. You've turned me into your puppet." The boyfriend froze for a moment. "I betrayed you? No. I ran away. I can't stand it anymore. I want to live like a human being. You always think you love me, but you really just love the feeling of controlling me." Hearing this, the boyfriend gritted his teeth, his face distorted with rage. For a few seconds, I thought things might calm down. But then, a slap so hard the whole car seemed to shake. The girl was thrown sideways, her head hitting the window. I flinched. My foot reflexively slammed the brake, and the car jerked hard. I turned back, trying to reason with him. "Hey man, calm down. Let's solve this gently." But instantly he roared, "Focus on driving, or are you her other boyfriend too?" I gripped the steering wheel, trying to stay calm after his threat. His face was beet red as he glared at me for a few seconds before turning back to the girl. I kept silent, faced forward, and drove faster. I just wanted this increasingly terrifying ride to end. Through the mirror, I saw the girl holding her face and crying. A few minutes passed in heavy silence. Then the girl spoke again. "Let's just end it." And then, without warning, he lunged. He bellowed like an animal. I turned around and was stunned to see a knife in his hand, and it was coming down on the girl. Both the girl and I screamed. Everything shattered into chaos. The sound of the knife stabbing and the overlapping screams. Blood splattered onto the seats and the windows. The metallic smell of blood filled the confined space. I gasped, my foot seemingly glued to the gas pedal. The car sped up, rocketing to nearly 80 miles per hour. I didn't hear the girl screaming, but instead weak moans. He kept going like an emotionless machine. I wanted to do something, but my body was paralyzed. And then, a loud siren from ahead snapped me out of it. I saw a police car patrolling slowly up ahead. Hope flared. I slowed down and drove straight towards it. I intentionally slammed my car into the back of the police cruiser and brought the car to a complete stop. Immediately, the maniac shifted his attention to me. He yelled, demanding that I drive away right now. His eyes were bloodshot, his mouth twisted like a demon. The blood-soaked knife in his hand was pointed directly at me. I knew I was about to die, but my survival instinct took over. I tore off my seatbelt, my fingers shaking as I pressed the button to recline the driver's seat all the way back. I yanked the door open, threw myself out, and tumbled onto the road. I screamed for help, my voice hoarse, blood smeared all over me. 2 officers from the patrol car rushed over. One pulled out his gun, and the other lunged to open the back door. The guy was still struggling, the knife still in his hand. The police officers subdued him and put him in handcuffs. I sank down onto the curb, shaking uncontrollably. The ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. They took the girl out. She was still breathing, but weakly. Blood was seeping out everywhere. The girl was seriously injured and may lose some motor function. That crazy boyfriend was charged with attempted murder. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD by a doctor and had to undergo therapy. The girl survived. I, however, suffered from insomnia for months. I used to think that just working hard was enough to be safe. But in this city, no one knows what awaits them after every ride. I don't drive Uber anymore. But every time I see the light reflected on a wet road, I hear the screams in the rearview mirror. If you are driving at night, pay attention to the look in the eyes of the person sitting behind you. My girlfriend Maya and I are an adventurous couple. Whenever we get the chance, we try to get out of the city and do all sorts of outdoor activities. This time, late one afternoon, we decided to go camping for about a week. We both work freelance, which is pretty flexible with time, so packing up and hitting the road wasn't difficult at all. We packed everything we needed and headed straight to the campsite. It was a state park that allowed free camping for up to 14 days without a permit. My pickup truck was rolling down a bumpy dirt road for quite a while. It was already dark, and I had made a terrible mistake. I forgot to turn on my headlights. I don't know why I overlooked such a basic thing, but it's something that will haunt me forever. Even worse, I was driving too fast for the terrain and the low light conditions. In a split second, Maya screamed. Right in front of the truck, just a few feet away, we both saw a huge fallen tree blocking the middle of the road. I couldn't do anything but slam on the brakes and hope that we could stop in time before impact. However, luck was not on our side. We slammed into the tree, and darkness quickly took over. I was unconscious for a few seconds, and when I woke up, the first feelings were dizziness and a severe ringing in my ears. But my top priority was checking on Maya. I turned to look at her. Maya was completely motionless. Even though it was dark, the moonlight was enough to illuminate her face, and I noticed her eyes were closed. I screamed her name, trying to wake her, but Maya didn't react at all. I shakily took out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it on her. I had braced myself for some kind of serious injury, but the sight before me was something I could never have prepared for. First, I saw blood. She was wearing a white shirt, so the blood showed up clearly. And then my heart stopped when I saw a tree branch had pierced right through Maya's chest. It wasn't a very large branch, maybe the size of a finger, and it was still attached to the fallen tree in front of us. I stammered my girlfriend's name. I didn't dare to shake her because I was afraid of causing more injury. I just knew I shouldn't touch her. I tried to call 911, but my phone had no signal. The truck wouldn't start anymore, so driving away was impossible. My mind was spinning, trying to find a way to save Maya, but the options were so few. The only reasonable thought that flashed through my head was to use my pocket knife to cut the branch and get Maya out of the truck. I would place her by the side of the road and run for help. I climbed onto the hood of the truck, reached through the broken glass, trying my hardest in all sorts of positions to cut that branch. But the knife was too small. I didn't dare to apply too much force, and blood was still slowly oozing from the wound on Maya's chest. I started to really panic. More than 30 minutes had passed, and she still hadn't woken up. I went back into the truck and started to pray. This was strange for me, as I hadn't prayed since I was a child, but at that moment, I was willing to try anything. I clung to the faint hope that the branch hadn't hit her heart. I checked Maya's pulse. It wasn't strong, but it was still beating. All I could do was wait, hoping someone would drive by and help us. About 20 more minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity to me. I started crying loudly, continuously muttering apologies and begging Maya to be strong. Fortunately, God must have heard my prayers. I started to see headlights from behind. Light flooded the truck cabin, and I quickly jumped out, yelling and waving my arms at the driver. He stopped right behind our truck, rolled down his window, and asked what was wrong. I stammered a quick explanation, and he told me to slow down because he couldn't understand what I was saying. When I explained again calmly, his face changed instantly. He got out of his truck, took a flashlight, walked to the passenger door, and shone it on Maya. I heard him curse and tell me that her only hope was to cut the branch and try to drive her down the mountain to the EMT station, as he didn't have cell service either. He had a chainsaw in the bed of his truck. I was terrified, thinking that the shaking of the branch during the cutting would injure her more severely, but there was truly no other option. He started cutting at a position about a hand's length away from her chest. I grabbed a blanket and covered her to limit sawdust falling into the wound. Her body shook slightly, but she was still unconscious, so at least she wasn't feeling the pain, I thought. Finally, she was freed from the tree. The man and I combined our efforts, gently lifting Maya and placing her down in the back seat of his truck. I got into the passenger seat and we started driving down the mountain. Maya remained unconscious the entire way. It took us 20 minutes to reach the EMT station, a place I didn't even know existed. They put her in an ambulance, and then she was airlifted to a larger hospital about an hour's flight away. Maya had a punctured lung, but thankfully, her heart was not damaged. The doctor said that if the branch had been just an inch to the left, it would have pierced her heart, and she would likely have died within minutes of the crash. She was in a coma for almost 2 weeks. When she woke up, she could barely speak because of the pain in her chest. Maya had to stay in the hospital for more than 2 months, undergoing complex surgeries to try and repair all the damage. It is possible that in the future, she will need a lung transplant. I'm grateful that Maya survived, and I still keep in touch with the man who saved her life. Currently, Maya still needs to use oxygen and occasionally has difficulty breathing. I take her to monthly checkups and we are doing everything we can in hopes of seeing her make a full recovery someday. While she was still in the hospital, I proposed to Maya, and she said yes. No matter what happens, I still look forward to spending the rest of my life with her. I will never forget that night, and I often struggle to forgive myself for what happened. But I'm also glad that it's something she won't have to remember. I'm Lauren Parker, 29, and I just landed a job at Heaven Spa, right down the street here in Denver. I used to be a therapist at a fitness center, but got let go when they started downsizing. Been bouncing between temp jobs for the last 3 months, so when I got the interview at Heaven Spa, I was beyond excited. The place is tucked away in this quiet, windowless building with a smooth stone exterior. The moment I stepped inside, a sudden chill ran through me, and I shivered. The front desk was dead silent, no soft music, no friendly hellos. The receptionist led me down this long hallway, where soft yellow lights flickered against ivory walls covered in weird spiral designs, looked like tangled up snakes. At the end of the hall, Marion Hale, the manager, was waiting for me. She was a tall, thin, middle-aged woman with long black hair and an hourglass figure. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "So, you're Lauren? Welcome." After a quick interview, mostly just personal questions and small talk, Marion took me to another room. There were 4 other new hires already sitting there. A middle-aged guy with sunken eyes, a young girl, a woman, and a skinny dude. Nobody said a word, like they were already used to this weird vibe. Marion told us to hand over all our stuff, phones, watches, wallets. She just stood there, staring us down, waiting for us to go along with it. No one argued, no explanation, just cold silence. Then the lights dimmed, and a screen lit up with this pale blue glow. "Your body isn't yours," a ghostly voice echoed. "You're a gift of healing." When the lights came back on, the room was dead quiet. The young woman suddenly broke down crying, jumped up, and bolted out of there, with the skinny guy right behind her. Marion didn't stop them. She just smiled, like she knew it was going to happen. "Those who stick it out will get what they deserve," she said. I hesitated, ready to get up and leave, but Marion's words froze me in place. I needed the money. And just like that, I started working at Heaven Spa. My job was simple, treating clients using Heaven Spa's so-called special methods. Every client came in through a separate entrance. I never saw their faces, and it felt like they were ghosts, like they weren't even real people. We did treatments with weird names like purification, integration, rebirth. No one ever really explained what any of it meant. After every session, my body felt heavy, drained in a way I couldn't explain. My memory started slipping too, pieces just gone, without a trace. Marion always told me I was doing great. Marion hooked me up with perks too, a private room, free meals, and some pretty sweet bonuses. At the end of each workday, we'd all meet in this dark room to go over how we did. The place was dim, and there were whispers all around us. I did whatever Marion told me, no questions asked, but I couldn't really remember what I did with the clients. When I left the room, all I could think about were the customers and the fat bonuses that kept me stuck in this job. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember anything else. One day, I noticed a bruise on my wrist in the shape of a spiral, just like the symbols on the walls. I looked in the mirror. It was still me, but my eyes looked cloudy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I knew something seriously sketchy was going on, but I couldn't stop myself from going along with it. Those end-of-day meetings kept getting weirder and weirder. We stood in a small circle, surrounded by a bigger circle of doctors, nurses, and people who'd been working here forever. They told us to close our eyes and listen to the sounds coming from every direction while the people in the outer circle started mumbling. The sounds were a mess, nothing clear, just noise that drilled into my brain and ears. Over time, we all learned to mumble along, like it was second nature. One night, I cracked my eyes open during the ceremony and noticed the guy next to me was gone. No one said a word about him the next day. Then more of them started disappearing, one by one, like they never existed. I started questioning everything I was doing. My body felt weaker every day. My sleep was all over the place, and sometimes I'd wake up with small cuts on my skin. No clue how they got there. Why wasn't anyone talking about them? Were they really gone, or was I just losing my mind? If I stayed, was I going to be the next one to vanish? One night, after finishing work, I made up some excuse to skip the meeting. I wandered down the hallway, lost in thought, trying to decide if I should stick it out or just walk away from this job for good. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of a room I didn't recognize. A chill shot down my spine, making my heart race, but my curiosity wouldn't let me walk away. After making sure no one was behind me, I crept over and gently pushed the door open. A dark, stuffy room hit me with a strong, musty smell. On the floor, there were piles of white uniforms mixed with watches, rings, phones, and wallets, all covered in dust. My hands were shaking as I walked to the far wall, where portraits of former employees were plastered up but their eyes had been scratched out, leaving creepy, empty spaces. At the very end, I saw my own portrait. It was still untouched. Was this what was going to happen to me too? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my shoulder and straight to my head. My body shut down, and I collapsed to the floor, fading into darkness. When I woke up, my body felt heavy, and I realized I was lying on a treatment bed, surrounded by figures dressed in white. They were chanting, their voices hissing through the air like snakes. A cold hand touched my forehead, sending chills through my whole body. I tried to move, but I was completely paralyzed. Marion's whisper filled my ear. "You're about to become one of us." And that's when it hit me. People like me aren't healers. We're the fuel. My life force was being drained bit by bit, breath by breath. The room spun around me, my vision blurred. I can't die here. Now I've got a new role at the spa, greeting new candidates for interviews. You're Zavia. Welcome. The radio was humming along in my beat-up car. Dust in the wind. That old song about how fragile life is. I ran my hand across the torn seat covers, then glanced down at the 3 guns laid out beside me, cleaned to a shine last night. It was one of those brutal May afternoons, the kind where the air feels like it's catching fire. I'd been sitting in the car for over an hour, staring through the window at the McDonald's on the corner. Sweat crawled down my back, my shirt clinging like plastic wrap. Wasn't the heat, though. It was that weird tightness in my chest that had been building all day. Through the glass, I could see every little thing inside. A family sharing fries. A young couple lost in their phones. The cashier. A young woman smiling at every customer. The smell of fries drifted in through my window and wrapped around me. Stuck in that moment, my mind drifted back to a few months ago. Steady job, tiny apartment, and a relationship that felt like something out of a dream. Then boom, company folded, cold little email, and those looks people give you when they don't know what to say. "It'll be okay, Roy." That's what they all said, but it wasn't. Everything I had was peeling away, one piece at a time. They said I'd bounce back, find a new path. But no one knew my path had run out miles ago. My hands were damp on the steering wheel. My breath came fast and shallow. I reached for one of the guns, stepped out of the car, the heat hit me like a slap. The door to the McDonald's slid open. Cold air rushed over my face. Nobody noticed me, except one little kid. 6, maybe. He was waving at everyone who walked in. He waved at me. I looked into those clear eyes of his, no doubt, no fear. I felt my hand raise the gun. The first shot cracked through the air, but it wasn't aimed at the kid. I fired straight at the glass in front of me. The crash was deafening, shards flying like shrapnel. A man holding his son hit the ground. Blood sprayed across the table, bright red like someone had thrown paint. The kid he'd been holding slipped from his arms, didn't even cry, just stared, wide-eyed, like he couldn't process what was happening. That's when the numbness set in, like I was watching some scene from a movie, not the one pulling the trigger. Then it all exploded. A wall of screams ripped through the air. Chairs slammed over. People tripped over each other, the pounding of feet and fists on doors. I caught sight of a kid crawling under the cashier counter, those bright sneakers flashing like a silent scream for help. A woman clutched her kid to her chest, trying to shield them with her body. I locked eyes with her. She was shaking, terrified, silently begging me not to. I pulled the trigger anyway, and she dropped, eyes still locked on mine. A little girl, maybe 8, took one in the shoulder and was dragging herself toward the back door. Her blood smeared a long streak of red across the floor. I saw one of the workers bolt toward the back of the kitchen, slammed right into the fryer, steam rising as her skin blistered on contact. "Stop, please! We all got people waiting at home!" she cried out, her voice cracking with raw panic when she caught sight of the gun pointed her way. The noise around me faded into a low hum, and for a second, I swore I saw my wife and kid in the corner of the room, tears in their eyes, not saying a word. I lifted the gun, pulled the trigger, and flinched when I realized it was just an old ad poster hanging on the wall. Some middle-aged guy stood up from the corner, arms raised, hands trembling. "I've worked here 7 years, long enough to know that no matter how bad today gets, tomorrow still shows up," he said, voice low and weirdly calm for a guy staring down death. Then came the sirens, first far off, then closer. My chest tightened, heart pounding, breath short, and all of a sudden, rage boiled up from somewhere deep and dark. My fingers clenched around the grip, slick with sweat, and I started firing at everything that moved. The blasts blurred with the screams. I couldn't even tell if the voice I heard was theirs or mine. Then there it was, that sharp, dry click. No more bullets. The gun slipped from my hand, hit the floor with a dead thud. I dropped with it, knees buckling, hitting the cold tiles. Everything came into sharp focus. Shattered glass catching the light, blood staining white tiles, lifeless eyes staring back at me. And in that frozen second, I saw it, a bullet cutting through the air, this tiny black speck on a mission to end me. The crack in my skull when it hit should have hurt, but it didn't. It felt like release. I hit the ground, eyes wide open, staring up at the ceiling spinning overhead. Then the dark took everything. This story was inspired by a real event. On the afternoon of May 18th, 1984, a man named James Huberty, 41 years old, walked into a McDonald's with 3 guns and a load of ammo. It was 3:56 p.m. when he stepped through the doors. At first, nobody paid much attention to him, but then, out of nowhere, he pulled out a submachine gun and started firing. For the next 77 minutes, he unleashed more than 250 rounds, shooting at anyone in sight. By the time it was over, 21 people were dead, and 19 more were injured. Cops showed up around 4 p.m., but with limited information, they thought it was a hostage situation, which held them back from going in. It wasn't until 5:17 p.m. that a SWAT sniper finally took the shot that ended it. People later learned that Huberty had been struggling with financial problems, mental health issues, and a deep sense of being cast out by society. After the tragedy, the McDonald's was torn down. The land was given over to build an educational center, and a memorial was put up to honor the victims. The San Isidro massacre exposed serious flaws in how law enforcement responded to mass shooting, and it led to changes in police tactics that are still used today. It's a brutal reminder of how critical it is to act quickly and decisively when lives are on the line.
I'm David. 7 years ago, I finished my studies at Stanford University, California. I'm stressed thinking about what job I will do and which city to choose to live in. My parents are elderly. They live on pensions in their hometown of Montana. In a few days, I will move out of the school dormitory. I constantly searched for information about cheap apartments on student groups and found a place about 8 kilometers from my dormitory. It is a fairly small 2-story house, including 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, living room, and kitchen on the 1st floor. This house is being rented by Kevin, 25 years old. He wants to find a roommate and reduce costs because Kevin has a fairly low income as a cashier at a convenience store. When I moved in, I was very surprised with the space and interior of the house. Everything is complete and comfortable, really great compared to the amount of money we rented. When I asked about the landlord, Kevin said he would come check the house quarterly. The rental contract Kevin had already prepared and just needed to sign it. Kevin is a quiet but kind person. Kevin helped me arrange things in the room and told me to let him know if I needed anything. The next days I sent my resumes everywhere looking for a job. One evening, I stayed up late to talk to my friends about work and upcoming plans. When I accidentally turned around, I was startled and almost dropped the phone when I saw Kevin standing at the door, looking at me with wide eyes. "I've been looking for my phone all night," Kevin answered me in an emotionless whisper. Looking down, I told Kevin in surprise that the phone was in his hand. Kevin slowly looked down at the phone in his hand, then without saying anything more, left for his room. He must be sleepwalking, I think. Another night I was half awake and half dreaming, feeling that the bed was more uneven today. When I moved, I felt like someone was lying next to me. I woke up and saw Kevin lying next to me, in a neat position, his hands on his stomach, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. I jumped up and screamed loudly. I got angry and asked Kevin why he was here. He maintained his lying position, slowly turning his head to look at me. "I'm so scared. It keeps clinging on to me. It wants to eat me." I sighed at the thought of Kevin sleepwalking again and pulled him back to his room and quickly went back to sleep because I had an interview tomorrow. The next morning I returned home at 11 a.m. after the interview. Hearing a shaky mumbly coming from upstairs, I ran up and saw Kevin sitting huddled in front of the door. Now that I look closely, Kevin is much thinner. His face is haggard and his eyes blackened. Kevin kept muttering incomprehensible things about death. I asked worriedly, but he didn't seem to hear anything. His mouth mumbled faster, his face showing fear and panic. I went to help Kevin up, but he reacted very strongly and pushed my hand away. He said he was out of breath and thirsty. I quickly ran to pour water, but when I returned, Kevin was gone. Pushing open Kevin's room door, I saw him lying on the bed, covered with a blanket. I put the glass of water on the bedside table and went out. Did he go through something terrible? A week later, I was accepted and had a job that matched my qualifications. One late afternoon after coming home from work, I was startled to see a strange man about 60 years old in the house. He was tall and thin, with many strange tattoos on his arms. I was quite impressed with his beard and long hair tied back. It turned out he was the owner of this house. He said he came to inspect the house and end the lease with Kevin. I was very surprised, so Kevin left without saying anything to me. The landlord told me to find more roommates to reduce costs because maybe in the next few months he will increase the rent a bit. The homeowner moved away and I was still thinking about Kevin. He left without taking anything with him, which was strange. About a week later, I was busy with a new job. The post looking for a roommate also received a lot of attention, but I haven't been able to reply to all of them. One night I came home early after 3 consecutive days of overtime. Lying in bed answering messages from a few people interested in the house, I fell asleep without realizing it. I met Kevin, still with the same haggard face, eyes wide open in panic. whispering voice echoing hauntingly.
Hold. There's a rope around my neck. There are too many people here. They all look at me with scary eyes.
Suddenly, Kevin let out a loud, shrill, and a painful scream. I jumped up, looked around the room in fear, then quickly reached out and turned on the light. Looking at the clock, it was just after 9 p.m. I calmed down and went down to the kitchen to pour myself a drink. I can't get out of my head thinking about Kevin. I searched every corner of the house with the thinking that this house must have some secret. I don't understand why I did that at that time. As if someone had instructed me, I suddenly remembered Kevin's bedroom. Unexpectedly, my guess was correct. Behind Kevin's bed, there was a door leading down to a place like the basement. I don't know if Kevin had discovered it yet. 40% of me right now is fear. The remaining 60% is curiosity. Holding the baseball bat from Kevin's room, I slowly walked down. I saw the dim light reach the end of the stairs, and the scene around the basement made me dumbfounded. Many human skeletons and bodies that had not yet fully decomposed were tied tightly to the four walls. In the middle of the room was Kevin's body, tied to a wooden post, his face filled with pain and panic. Kevin's neck was tied tightly with a blank stone string, and a talisman was pinned straight to his chest. On the wall behind me were photos of many people. They were all young men. I saw Kevin's photo on it, and in the last photo, pasted in the red circle, is me.
I'm Colleen, 25. I currently have a steady job in accounting. I met Cameron through a mutual friend. We quickly fell in love just a month after meeting. Partly because I was smitten by Cameron's good looks, and partly because he's so warm, genuine, and thoughtful. I even thought about marrying Cameron just 2 weeks into dating. The first 3 months of our relationship were definitely as sweet as a fairy tale romance. Cameron had a unique hobby that he was really passionate about. My 29-year-old boyfriend was really into fairy tales for kids at heart. He spent hours every day reading books and watching movies about fairy tale worlds. There were stories Cameron had read hundreds of times, knowing every detail, every word, every comma. I respected his hobby, especially since I'm a big bookworm myself. We usually went to the bookstore together once a week, for it was a good date spot. By the 4th month of our relationship, Cameron started showing some unusual irritability. Cameron yelled at me for picking up a fork before he sat down at the table. He constantly complained and got annoyed when I didn't put my glass on the coaster. I wasn't allowed to buy or eat anything that could make a mess or any food that made noise when chewed. Cameron, in particular, wouldn't come into the house unless the host came out to say hi and invite him in. He also insisted that I had to do the same. It would be very rude and even dangerous to do that on your own. The way Cameron laid down a set of rules for me was like a princess learning etiquette in a fairy tale, but the way he reacted when I didn't do things exactly right was like someone losing their mind. I started feeling incredibly uncomfortable in this relationship. I broke up with him several times, but he'd always kneel and beg for forgiveness, promising he'd change. He would say sorry for his foolishness, and I kept falling for it, over and over. But Cameron's controlling and irritating behavior just kept getting worse every day. It really took a toll on my mental health. One day, Cameron invited me over to his parents' house for dinner. My parents want to meet you because I told them you're as beautiful as Sleeping Beauty in the forest. I agreed to go to Cameron's parents' house. I thought maybe I could figure out how to deal with Cameron's behavior after getting some advice from his mom. The next day, Cameron took me shopping for a dress to wear for the dinner. I told Cameron it wasn't necessary since I already had plenty of clothes. A dinner at my boyfriend's house didn't need to be fancy. No, you need to look like a princess. My parents will really appreciate it. Appreciate? I repeated what Cameron said and stressed it when I saw him smiling. Don't be so harsh with your attitude and tone. It'll make you seem really rude. I didn't bother to respond to Cameron and just stared out the car window. I wasn't sure if it was the right choice to accept or not. As Cameron said, he took me to a store that had dresses just like the ones fairy tale princesses wear. Without letting me say anything, Cameron had me try on a bunch of dresses with layers and layers of heavy fabric. In the end, he brilliantly picked the most uncomfortable and heavy one for me to wear. I should have just left and ended it right there. I don't know why I have such incredible patience and endurance. Or was I just being stupid? After buying the princess dress, Cameron took me to a makeup shop. After sitting still for 3 hours, I looked at myself in the mirror and was amazed at how beautiful I looked. I didn't think I'd look as beautiful as Princess Aurora. Let's head home now and brush up on some more manners. Cameron's words felt like a hard slap to me. Cameron then quickly pulled me away. That night, instead of taking me to his parents' house, Cameron called a taxi for me. I'll go home and get everything ready with my parents to welcome you. I could see the taxi driver's eyes glancing at the rearview mirror every 5 seconds. I struggled to get out of the taxi in that heavy dress. Cameron's parents' house is a wooden house, and it's got a pretty fairy tale vibe to it. I walked up to the door to ring the bell and saw a note stuck above it. Hey, my parents and I need to step out for a bit. It won't be long. The door was slightly open, so I walked in. I needed to sit down right away because my feet were going numb from the high heels. The inside of the house was pretty cozy. I sat down at a small wooden table and looked around for a bit. I was about to suffocate in this corset after wearing it for nearly 6 hours. I couldn't even tell if I was lying down or sitting, as long as it was comfortable though. I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast until that evening. Seeing the plate of cookies on the table, I grabbed one to have before dinner. Crumbs fell everywhere, so I quickly stood up, brushed them off, and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I drank my water while checking out the kitchen utensils. They were irresistibly cute. I heard some noise from outside, so I quickly ran to the living room and sat down, thinking Cameron and his parents had come back. But no one was there. I sat and waited for a few more minutes, and then I suddenly heard a growl. Actually, it sounded like someone was trying to growl like a hungry lion. I stood up and looked in the direction where I thought the growl was coming from. A very unpleasant creaking sound came from the door of a room, and at the same time, it slowly opened. I was startled when 2 people in bear mascot costumes popped out from inside. Their faces were partially visible, but I couldn't see them clearly. They slowly approached me, still growling. I was really confused. I asked multiple times who they were, but they just kept up their strange behavior. I quickly ran towards the door, but another person in a bear mascot costume blocked my way. Cameron? I gasped when I saw Cameron's face peeking out from inside. What is the meaning of this?
You're going to be punished for not passing the challenge. You walked into a stranger's house without knocking. You ate cookies and drank water without asking. I especially don't accept your sitting posture.
The 2 people who just came out of that room were Cameron's parents. What on earth was going on? I was the invited guest for dinner. Why was my personality being tested? At my limit, I took off the crown from my head, threw it at Cameron, and shouted, Immediately, Cameron and his parents started roaring like they had lost their minds. They threatened to tear me apart, like the wicked characters in fairy tales who got their comeuppance. The eyes of those three were red and veiny, and their behavior was completely out of the ordinary. I was terrified and bolted out of the house. I took off my painful high heels, ran as fast as I could, and called the police. Now I understood why princesses always seem so slow and useless in emergencies like this. The dress was too heavy and cumbersome. Cameron's rough hands grabbed my hair and yanked me back. Luckily, the police arrived just in time to rescue me. I was in a terrible state, with torn clothes and bite marks all over my arms and calves. Cameron's family was taken to a mental health facility for treatment and detention. I was in shock and had to be hospitalized to have the bite marks carefully monitored. I was haunted by images of princesses, castles, and all that stuff. What if the police hadn't come in time? Would those people eat me alive?
The neighbors intend to eat us. I'm Kane, 32 years old, have been married for 5 years, and I have a 3-year-old son. My small family lives in a peaceful neighborhood, in a well-appointed house that my spouse and I have worked hard for over the years. The area we live in still has quite a few houses that are unoccupied. One weekend, after returning from the supermarket, my wife announced some news with a tone of anticipation and excitement. We're going to have new neighbors soon. I saw 2 large moving trucks parked in the house across the street since early this morning. I wasn't as excited as my wife. For me, having neighbors or not makes no difference. I'm an introvert and don't enjoy socializing or meeting new people. By bedtime, I still saw the 2 trucks parked outside, and what was strange was that there were no homeowners in sight, only the movers still working. Do you think they have young children? My wife stood behind me, looking at the house across the street, and whispered. I looked at her and then at the house, remaining silent. I hope so. That way our Roger will have someone to play with. The next morning I went downstairs, after getting ready. My wife was in the kitchen making breakfast, and our son was sitting very quietly at the dining table. The 3 of us started a new day happily, with cheerful laughter. Kane, what do you think about inviting our new neighbors over for dinner? Dinner? But we don't know anything about them yet. I met Brenna, the owner of the house, this morning, and she's very friendly. My wife was very excited about having new neighbors. She suggested the dishes she would prepare for dinner. She even imagined what the future would be like with our 2 families being close. I definitely didn't like this at all. Not because I'm worried about the food or anything else. It's just that sitting down to eat and talk with a stranger is really difficult for me. Alright then, later, you'll go over to the neighbor's house to introduce yourself and invite them, okay? My wife is always like that, making decisions without considering how I feel. I kept delaying the introduction until that afternoon. By the time my wife was about to lose her patience, I finally got up from my seat and went over to the neighbor's house. After knocking twice, a woman whom I guessed was Brenna opened the door and greeted me very warmly. Hello, my spouse and I just moved in. Is there something you need? I'm Kane. I live in the house across the street. Oh, so you're Aurora's husband. Nice to meet you. I could sense that Brenna shared some of my wife's traits, cheerful and friendly. But it also took quite a while for me to make the invitation. My family would like to prepare dinner at our house so that we can get to know each other better. Sure, my spouse and I will come. How about this Friday evening? For me, any day works. I agreed with Brenna. Before leaving, I took a brief glance inside their house, just by accident. On the sofa, there was a man reading a magazine, probably the husband Brenna mentioned. I found something very strange about him, and also about Brenna. I'm not sure what it was. Finally, the Friday I was dreading arrived. My wife prepared a sumptuous meal and got formal outfits ready for our son and me to welcome the guests. At exactly 6 p.m., Brenna and her husband arrived, bringing along a small dog, a bottle of wine, and some cold cuts. Hello, this is Dominic, my husband, and this is Hack. It's great to have your family over for dinner. Brenna greeted us cheerfully while Dominic was quite indifferent. He's probably an introvert like me, but with an added touch of aloofness. The dinner unfolded with two contrasting states. My wife and Brenna chatted and laughed happily, while Dominic and I focused on eating in silence. I also tried to strike up a conversation with him a few times, but all I received in response were cold, sharp glances. He wasn't inclined to chat, but also didn't take his gaze off me. After about 30 minutes of the meal, which felt like 3 hours to me, I was on the verge of freezing up from discomfort. It didn't end there. After the meal, we sat on the sofa to have dessert. My wife proudly mentioned that she had researched and made the pumpkin pie recipe herself, and Brenna was very impressed. I'm impressed with the meat, Dominic said. His gaze was still fixed on me. He's complimenting your cooking skills, Aurora, Brenna said. The two women returned to the kitchen to share cooking tips with each other, leaving me feeling awkward and tense, my whole body stiffening. I didn't dare look at Dominic anymore, so I turned to pet Hack and play with my son. The sound of Dominic placing his plate on the table indicated that he had finished his dessert. Out of courtesy, I hesitantly asked him if he would like some more pie or tea. I'm curious. I wonder what your meat will taste like, Dominic said. My body was enveloped in a sense of shock and fear. Seeing Dominic's insinuating smile, I stood up angrily and shouted at him, "Are you out of your mind?" My wife and Brenna rushed over, anxiously asking what had happened. I felt like my limits were being tested as the neighbor continued to stare at me with an amused smile. I clenched my fists in anger, unsure whether he didn't understand or was intentionally pretending not to. Brenna and my wife seemed like the spokespeople for both of them. The two women kept apologizing and thanking each other. Brenna hugged Hack and then led her husband back home. After they left, I still couldn't calm down. My emotions were very chaotic and uncomfortable. My wife is waiting for me to calm down before asking about everything clearly. Of course, my wife will believe what I say. She reacted with surprise to anger. At this moment, I am the one calming and advising my wife to stay calm. My wife and I didn't manage to sleep until 2 a.m. The next morning, my wife still got up very early. I went downstairs and was surprised to see my wife's rather uncomfortable and angry state. She was heading towards the front door. I watched my wife and was alarmed to realize that she was heading towards the neighbor's house across the street. Brenna was also at the door, and the two of them were talking about something. I hurried over to my wife and grabbed her hand. Your husband's words yesterday made us a bit concerned. He was probably just joking, right? No, he wasn't joking, Brenna said with a knowing smile. Her words left my wife and me speechless. We will enjoy each member of your family in turn, starting with him, then you, and also My wife angrily shouted at Brenna, stopping the disgusting line of thought and the mention of our son's name coming from her mouth. My wife and I seriously urged Brenna's family to stop this cruel joke and leave. We closed the door, but Brenna still stood there, looking at us and smiling. After that morning conversation with Brenna, my wife and I felt even more tense. Although it was just words, their attitude and the look in their eyes made us think a lot. I suggested to my wife that we buy a gun for self-defense, just in case. My wife immediately objected, saying I was overreacting. She also pointed out that having a gun in the house is dangerous, especially with our young son around. That night, worried about my state of mind, my wife handed me a pill along with a glass of water. "It's just a sedative, don't overthink things." I listened to her, took the pill, and fell asleep without even realizing it. The sound of the phone ringing startled me awake. It was nearly 1 a.m. at the time. I quickly silenced the phone and answered the call. "Hello, may I ask who is calling at this hour?" The response I received was silence. I informed them that I would hang up, and then I heard a faint sound. At first, it sounded like a clicking noise. Then it was the sound of saliva, and then I was stunned to realize it was the sound of chewing, like the sound of an animal devouring its prey. "I'm very curious about your taste." My whole body was numb, as if an electric current was flowing through it. I lost my composure and was about to shout loudly, but seeing that my wife was still sound asleep, I restrained myself. Carrying the laptop to the living room, I tried every possible way to look up information about the phone number owner. But there were no results. I stayed up until morning, and my wife, when she went looking for me and found me in such a fatigued state, was very worried. I told her about my intention to move to a different place. "No, don't you remember how hard we worked to get this house?" My wife decided to call the police. My family will continue to stay here. That afternoon, my wife and I went to the police station to report the incident. Contrary to our anxiety, the officer handling the case was very casual. "Mason Davis." I looked at the nameplate on his chest and muttered, "Oh, calm down, Mr. and Mrs. Moore. It's just a joke from the new neighbors." But we insisted that it wasn't a joke. Our family did not perceive any goodwill from those neighbors. Moreover, our son is very young and needs to be protected. "A joke that involves children is unacceptable, officer," I countered with a firm attitude. "Listen, have you ever met a cute little kid and joked about wanting to pinch or bite them? Is such a joke as threatening and serious as what Mr. and Mrs. Moore are describing?" Seeing his attitude left us both stunned and outraged. Another officer present handled everything for us. He told us to go home first, and that the police would go talk to those neighbors. But it wasn't until the afternoon of the next day that the police car with 2 officers arrived at our neighbor's house. It was still Brenna who opened the door with a cheerful and friendly attitude, with no trace of surprise on her face. My wife and I watched from inside the house. After a couple of exchanges, Brenna's attitude remained very cheerful, and the male officers was the same. They nodded to each other, and then the 2 officers left without any report or further action. They didn't get into the police car, but instead walked toward my house with this serious demeanor. That was Officer Mason Davis. I remembered his face and name. "Mr. Moore, I'm sorry to have to issue a first warning to your family. The Brenna and Dominic family across the street has accused you of knocking on their door and harassing them first." I lost my composure, explained to the officer in a very heated manner, and even wanted to go to the neighbor's house to clarify the issue. My wife quickly stopped me. The outburst would only prove that I was indeed the one causing a commotion and harassing their family. The police left, and I stood at the door watching them with a sense of helplessness. Accidentally glancing over at the neighbor's house, Dominic stood at the door, smiling at me, and even licking his lips. I went inside, trying to calm my breathing and regain my composure. The next morning I went out early and didn't return until after lunch. "Where have you been all morning?" my wife complained, concerned. I went to get this. I pulled my wife into the kitchen to avoid our son and presented a gun in front of her. My wife was extremely surprised and somewhat upset for not having discussed it with her in detail. "I'll only use it in dangerous situations for self-defense. I will protect you and our child." I felt quite relieved after legally registering to own a gun. That night, I could sleep peacefully, knowing that the gun was under my pillow. In the middle of the night, a clattering noise outside woke me up. I didn't react immediately, but stayed in place to listen further, and the noise happened again. I got out of bed, approached the window, and looked outside. A shadow was moving in the backyard. Immediately, I reached under the pillow to grab the gun and ran out of the room. "What's going on, Kane?" My wife's voice was still groggy. "Call the police right away, Aurora. Go to Roger's room and stay there with him. Remember." I went outside despite my wife calling after me and crying. I turned on all the lights around the house in the backyard while walking around to check. A plate was placed on the ground near the door with something on top. I approached. It was a piece of meat still stained with bright red blood and a note. "I will definitely enjoy you." I angrily kicked the plate, shouted loudly, and fired 3 shots into the sky. "Get out of here, you bastard! I know you're still here, Dominic!" The sound of the police siren grew louder, and I became more confident. With a weapon for defense in my hand and standing in my own house, it'll be enough reason to accuse that neighbor. An officer approached me with a very calm demeanor, while the other one searched around the house. "It's Officer Mason Davis again. Is he the only cop in this whole city? You are using a weapon without proper legal documentation." I'm confident in saying that I have all the necessary legal documents and am ready to show them if he wants. "The provider of the gun and the legal documentation for you is not sufficiently reliable, Mr. Moore. We will confiscate this gun, along with the related documents." I'm not cooperating, that's for sure. "How do you know I have a gun? How do you know the address I registered for its use? What is the basis for you to say that the place is not legally compliant?" I asked a series of questions that made Officer Mason uncomfortable. I provided the piece of meat along with the note. This will be the most convincing evidence for everything I reported. "It's very possible that this is someone else's meat, isn't it?" I emphasized my suspicion. "We will confiscate it and take it for testing." The police left, and my family fell into confusion and fear once again. I thought everything would become clear and resolved, but it only got worse. My small family is being threatened by strangers, weirdos, and possibly even malicious perverts. It has been a week since that terrifying night. It feels like a whole year has passed. My family's life has become darker and more suffocating than ever before. Feeling unsafe, my wife has taken a temporary leave from work, and our son has also stopped attending school. My job can be done online, so the family's finances are still being maintained. There are no more unusual occurrences, but the joy and freedom are gone. We constantly feel anxious and unsettled in our own home. Seeing my son and wife visibly losing weight, I feel deeply distressed. The more I get angry, the more I want to solve everything. An afternoon while sitting and working by the window, a habit has formed. I regularly observe my neighbors and their every action. Every day, like clockwork, a delivery person arrives at their house, and the recipient is always Brenna. I'm not sure what they do for work, but I've never seen them leave the house for too long. In the evening, a rather luxurious car parked in front of the neighbor's house. The two men get out of the car. Immediately, I recognize Officer Mason Davis and the other person whom I haven't met before. The two men are dressed casually, chatting and laughing and carrying a box. They knock on the door and are invited inside by Brenna. So, it seems they know each other. Officer Mason and Brenna's family, Dominic. From the start, all my accusations were just meaningless ramblings because Dominic will be innocent by any means. I took photos of everything I witnessed in case they might be needed later. It wasn't until late the next evening that Officer Mason left Brenna and Dominic's house. He left alone, without the other man, still in a very cheerful state, just like the day before. I didn't say anything to my wife about what I had observed. I want my wife and son to have a more relaxed and light-hearted state of mind. My wife can't keep taking time off from work, and Roger's leave from school has expired. Life needs to return to normal. I decided to drop off and pick up my wife and son every day to ensure their absolute safety. On the third day, after Officer Mason left the neighbor's house, the stranger still hadn't appeared. I began to speculate about the worst possible scenario for that man. He might have been dismembered and digested. What should I do? Report it to the police? But I'll have to deal with that strange and secretive Officer Mason again. And who would believe me? They might think I'm just harassing the neighbors, suffering from paranoia, or even being crazy. I started investigating information about Officer Mason. Surprisingly, he has a less than favorable past: abuse, theft, and even sexual assault. How could he have even joined the police force? Researching Dominic, there is quite limited information about him, but it's enough to shock me. Dominic Miller, born August 13, 1983. Former police chief dismissed due to ethical misconduct scandal. I gradually started to understand some information about the relationship between Mason and Dominic. The next day, an envelope from the Forensic Institute arrived at our house. It's the results of the test on the meat from that night. My phone suddenly rang. Mr. Moore, this is Officer Mason. Have you received the test results? We have a copy here as well. Please review the results and call me back so we can discuss the best course of action. Officer Mason hung up with a very annoying, mocking tone. Both my wife and I had been eagerly anticipating these results. But when we actually had it in our hands, it was really difficult for my wife and me to face. The test results just lay on the table for nearly a whole day. That evening, when we went to our room, we decided to open it and see the results. The results showed that it was pork. My wife breathed a sigh of relief, thanking God that we could start over with a normal life. But I wasn't relieved, because I knew more. All of this wasn't as simple as it seemed. After much contemplation, I decided to persuade my wife to leave. I accept that I may be seen as a coward, but my wife and son are far more important than anything else. I don't want my family's life to have any further involvement with those frightening people. No one can help my family right now, not even the police. Roger and our future children need a better environment to grow up in. No, Kane, I don't want it like this, my wife cried, feeling helpless and desperate. I embraced my wife and son. After quickly packing up for 3 days, we drove away in the night. We will find a way to deal with that house. It's still a valuable asset. We moved to a different, unfamiliar town, into a smaller house, but one that felt warm and comfortable. I continued with my work. My wife found a new job with better pay, and Roger gradually adjusted to his new school. 3 months later, I watched the news and learned that Brenna had passed away. The news reported that Dominic had brutally murdered his wife in the bedroom. Dominic was taken to the police station in a state of uncontrollable madness. According to the doctor's report, Dominic had contracted a parasitic infection from eating raw meat for an extended period. Police also discovered a large amount of unidentified meat packed into 2 refrigerators in Dominic and Brenna's kitchen. The meat samples were sent for testing to determine exactly which animal they came from. Besides Dominic, the hospital also admitted another rabies case in a critical condition, that is Officer Mason. There was no news about the stranger who had come to Dominic's house that night. Indeed, it seems that their family had a preference for eating raw meat. And as for where that meat came from, only I and the 2 people suffering from rabies know for sure.